and potential sidings and description of track grades. And I mentioned this more, I used to work in Roseville. I was a traffic engineer for 8 years. And I was there when SP was there. And it was nice because once UP showed up, everything had to go to Omaha. So stuff's going to have to go to Omaha. Anyways, also, then we move on to 6.3, which is assess the benefits of alternative routes to meet or improve national and state security risk. In order to assess these benefits, we will probably be talking to FEMA, Homeland Security, Customs, Maritime, Coast Guard, Department of Defense. There's a lot of things that go into a railroad for security needs. I mean, when you talk about our freeways weren't built to get people around. Our freeways were built to get the military where it needed to be. And the railroad is somewhat the same way. So that's some important component of this. 6.4, we're going to identify the potential uses of proposed new routes, included but not limited to water or pedestrian or passenger service, water service, pipelines, redundant fiber. One of the things that Trinity County wants to see is better fiber optics in the county. You know, our internet in Weaverville runs at 3 megabits per second. And it really, you know, and then you go over to Red and they're at 60. So it'd be nice to see those benefits. And if you have that opportunity with the swath of land that goes through the county, you can look at some of those other opportunities to bring more benefit from the rail line. And then we also will look at special conditions and anything that might be a potential restriction to that corridor, which are, you know, could be operating conditions or different things like that. And then finally, we need to take a look at the permitting, take a look at what's going to be involved in CEQA and NEPA, because those are major factors in this, and see what we have to do. You know, what's going to be required to get to where we want to be. It's not going to be the analysis of the environmental, but when you go to have an environmental study, you want to have some of the preliminary work done so that you can determine what studies are going to be required for your environmental report. So these are some of the things that start to identify those things that are going to be needed, so that when you go to scope out your environmental document, you already have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be looking for. And then again, we want to identify all the big environmental issues, concerning but not limited to sensitive habitats, endangered species, biological significant areas, geologic hazards. Trinity County is a lot of DG, so you know it's a lot of what we have around here. It's hard to build on soil sometimes, so it's one of the things that has to be considered. Contaminated sites, residential areas, and for contemplation of environmental impacts along the proposed routes, and then talk about some of the acceptable or accepted mitigation measures that might be used along the route. It's not meant to be the environmental document, it's just meant to start the outline of what we're going to be looking for. Again, the environmental document from the floor to the ceiling in about 3 or 4 years and a couple $1 million. That's what that's going to take when we get to that phase. So anyways, we also need to make sure that we identify our cultural resources. As you know, the hills and mountains around here have a heavy influence from the cultural, from the Native American tribes, and so we want to bring them in and consult with them and talk about a lot about some of the areas that might be very sensitive to those tribes, and that we want to have an idea so that we can try to avoid it or have plans to start to mitigate it. And working with the tribes, they really do like to be there even before we really start thinking about it, so that they can help us. I work with them closely. In Trinity County, it's the Norwell tribe, and they have been very helpful in a lot of projects when we keep them involved. And as long as you keep them involved, they keep things moving along, they make things happen really fast, and they've always been very helpful. And then finally, you know, getting into the things like development costs, timelines, talking about planning, land acquisitions, right-of-way, CEQA compliance, construction management, cost breakdowns. Essentially, we need to know how much this is going to cost, and then we need to escalate it out a certain amount of years at different intervals to see how much is it going to cost in the future and how much are we going to have to go to get. Now keep in mind that the economic benefit will also escalate, but cost will also escalate. Cost and benefit will escalate all at the same time. The important part about 6.8 though is if you sit there and you say, well, geez, you know, my study says railroad will cost $1 billion today. 20 years from now, that railroad might cost $3 billion. You know, it's just, that's the economy of construction materials. Construction materials for the last 20 to 25 years have quite outpaced the consumer price index. So it's gotten a lot more expensive to construct things. And so what happens is if you don't escalate it, if you don't predict that future, you get to the day, you got your plans done, you got your environmental complete, you're ready to build a railroad, and you need $1.5 billion, but you only set aside $1 billion, you got a big problem. And that's the thing that we want to try with this feasibility study. We'll start identifying those values so that we can program this correctly, so that down the road we have the money to make it happen. Then again, sorry. So in the feasibility study, we have the things, we have a lot of reports that just go over what we had talked about, you know, that address the alternatives, the permitting needs, the environmental issues, cultural resources, estimates of cost and timelines, and things like that. But we put it all in there, and then out of that, we start to create that metrics, we populate it, and we end up with what we'll talk about here, which is the final report. But we end up with, yes, it's feasible, no, it isn't feasible, but we end up with an answer. Again, I talked about public outreach. Public outreach is going to be really important. Right now, there's a plan for 3 sets of public outreach in 3 different locations, and there'll probably be more than that. But right now, we're looking at, right when the study starts, to do a pre-feasibility public input meeting, to go out and hear from everybody about what they think of this. And as I said, I have gotten a wide range of opinions on this already. So it's, you know, it's even in the paper, the editorials have been in both directions. So there's a lot of opinions about how this project's going to look. But it's important, again, that it's inclusive and we listen to them. Then the second part, when we have the draft report, we'll like to go back out and get input. If you that are familiar with environmental reports, it's when you put the administrative draft out and you ask for people to comment on. And then we'll finish it all up, and then we'll roll it out and present it as the final report. We really won't be accepting much input at that point when it's the final report. We will report what the input is, but it probably won't affect the end result of the report. But at least everybody in the community will understand how we got to where we were, and that they will be informed as to what we did. Again, the deliverables are the report and the final presentation and report. And so then what we do when we're all done, put it all together. I have to take the Transportation Commission and get them to accept it. And that's, again, why it's going to be so important that we follow our goals. And essentially at that point, we're done. That's the point where we'll hand off the project, close it out. You have the feasibility study. And then from that point, there's the next set of decision making. And what do you form? You know, do you form a JPA? Do you form an agency? Do you get private-public partnership? What you do, that gets decided at that point before you roll into the environmental phase if it is determined to be feasible. And then finally, the task 9 is fiscal management. It's like I said, we have to be involved to make sure that you guys, that nobody gets into trouble about the way they do the accounting on the project. And so that's one of the things that we'll be watching over. And we'll be preparing quarterly invoices so that we can get reimbursed in time and manner. So the way it goes right now is consultant does the work, I pay the consultant, I prepare an invoice, I invoice the feds, I get the invoice back, I get paid. So there's a little bit of a lag time in that, but we usually can usually operate about a 3-month process during this. So anyways, with that I can answer any questions. have 3 to 4 years.
I was curious because I remember that 101 section of Last Chance or whatever, they were saying 8 years for that environmental study. So.
Yeah, you know, I don't know until we really get into what's going on there. It's very, everything's a big variable right now.
Right.
But it's not something that can be written in months. It's something that's going to require numerous studies to determine what are the impacts. And then when you identify those impacts, are we going to be able to either mitigate back to not significant, or is the community going to make that overriding consideration?
I think we have room for about one more question. I mean, one, and we'll have to give one. We have, yes, Jan, and then John.
No, that's okay.
Oh, no, I thought up too. John.
Pressure here.
I've got a question. Are you guys depending on Humboldt County reserving its maritime waterfront for this study? If it changes out here, if we alter our maritime waterfront, is that going to put a lesser need?
Our feasibility study is based on where we're at today. It's like punching a clock, and when you study something, it's really hard, especially when you're looking at a period over 2 years. You have to pick a point in time where it is what it is, and then you have to make an analysis based on that. Yes, you will look at if there's some projections for doing certain things, you take that under consideration. But we have to see, you know, what it is today and what are the proposals as we're moving forward. And then based on what is out there and what people are planning to do, that's what you can identify the report. But what I can't do is, and what the problem is that, let's say I pick where I'm at today, and a month before I'm done with the final report, someone says, well, I'm going to change what I do completely. Well, you're going to have to address the impacts to that report, because this report is based on what we initially looked at a certain period in time.
And I think
Yeah, John, question?
In terms of today, or when your documents are approved? And
Well, it's going to be when we're in that particular phase. And, you know, the phase about what is everybody going to do is that literature collection. And, you know, that's, I talked about that the other day, you know, people have reports to update. If they have things that they want to see in here, get busy.
And we're really talking about two different issues. Their issue in terms of what the study's going to be is to Eureka, to this area. It's not going to include our waterfront. So what we talked about before, this study's not going to be applicable to what's going to happen on our harbor front or anything like that. And I think that's my understanding what your question was. So.
Yes, I just wanted to know if the waterfront's going to be here.
This is not.
But that's okay. It's a need situation.
That's
different.
That's a completely different topic, and hopefully we're going to have that discussion pretty soon. That's purely a local decision. Well, that's not true. Anyway, that's not the question today. Do we have another question, Jan? Did you want?
Yeah, I'm an environmentalist. I'm firmly with climate change is happening. I want our security is at tipping points. So, can you speak up? Environment. My question is, can this be fast-tracked? Maybe you should have two different kinds of budgets in there, because for environmental reasons for the country and the world, it's important to establish. You look at that small map down there, and you see the world is one of the most underserved areas in terms of export and shipping in the country. And 80% of the ships can come in here now, and the 20% that can't are the big oil tankers we're told that there are special places for. This is an ideal one. We've done things like the marsh and other things that have been very banned.
No, I didn't make it down here, thank you.
And it seems to me that the feds and the state would want to
It did, it did get, oh, it did come down the river.
and the money that it takes to actually build the railroad is not that much different than what it costs to roads bypass some of the big changes for 299, some of the other big projects. That would be those big trucks, which become unnecessary.
Dan, I'm not sure what your question is.
So that's
Well, the question is asking fast track. This particular piece, no. Unfortunately, I wear many hats, so it's one of the things I'm fitting in amongst many other
Fast
things.
already, I'm talking about conclusions you're coming to.
The part that's really important in the environmental and in the feasibility phase is public input. And public input is really what drives timelines. And so the faster you fast track it, a lot of times people come back and say, you didn't give me a chance to be heard. And then you end up, it just ends up sometimes cloudier. But sometimes you can fast track it, sometimes you can't. I really don't know if it would be, but that's something we determine down the road.
And you understand, I'm not talking about your study, you're already fast, I'm talking about after the study, your environmental things.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be based on a lot of things. It's going to be based on one of the things, it's going to be based on money.
Rick, wait, don't start over. Just slide this skip back. It was dry enough.
Okay, just one more question, Lenny.
That's not a question, I'd just like to thank Trinity County for stepping up.
Oh, yes.
It's actually John and the board that you have to thank.
I need to talk to you.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Rick.
that a lot. Just one more.
What is
The topic, Mr. Knight,
FHWA,
our general plan
Federal
is
Highway
pretty specific in terms
Waterways?
of what's been adopted by the county and the cities. That's for the use of harbor. And it's for the use of the area out here for shipping, the use of the Fay Marina Island for commercial fishing, and specific uses for the Eureka. The proposals in terms of changing that, and that's what your topic was in terms of where we're going to that. So consideration for next month was that particular topic. So I'd like to have reinforcement because I got a decision to make whether to go with that topic or another one that's not as controversial. So I'd like to see a show of hands. Who would like to be talking about the future of the harbor? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Any questions of me or Harbor District?
If it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a shameless plug. As you know, as Rick mentioned, the Land Bridge Alliance is the one that's coming up with the $69,000 of the match. And while there's a lot of money been rolling in already, any kind of donation is appreciated. So the Land Bridge Alliance, if you'd like to donate to the match funding for this grant, see Pete Oranger, he's the treasurer of Land Bridge Alliance. We'll send you a custom UpState Rail Connect rail poster, along with a grateful thank you letter. So see Pete if you'd like to do that, we really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.